So, it's another grey day in the summer, London town, August the 2nd. Peter Whittle is here. Peter, how nice to see you.
Hello there, Mike. Good to see you.
We've been knowing each other. Well, I don't know. I can't speak English anymore. We've known each other a long time.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we've ever had you in this particular studio.
No, it was first for me.
But we've done a lot of things together.
Yeah.
You're a man that has some great beliefs. The New Culture Forum does some amazing work. Does some tremendous sort of videos, that documentaries, things that kind of follow the modern history of Britain, if you like.
That's right, yes. I suppose really our time has sort of come in a way as a think tank, Mike, because, we are all about cultural issues.
Yeah.
When we started, people were far more obsessed about economic ones.
Yeah.
And, of course, all the cultural issues, I mean that broadly,
Yeah.
National identity, immigration, all of that, and left-wing bias, all of those things are now right to the fore.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of very, very busy. So we've got branches all over the country now.
And are you finding that more and more people are coming to you to see what you're about and what your points of view are? Because Peter Hitchens talks about this, that this is a sort of, people talk about long COVID, I talk about long Blair. This is Tony Blair who set up all of this kind of, culture war scenario. And it's now sort of playing out because all the people that were children during Tony Blair's reign have now been through school, they've probably been through university, and now they're presenting themselves in the civil service, in our banking institutions, in all sorts of what you might call establishment jobs. But they've all become very left-wing.
Exactly. Well, I think the level of indoctrination through education and universities has been so high for so long. So, as you said, they're now in HR departments, these people, are often on very, very spurious degrees, but they've all been kind of really indoctrinated with these general beliefs. That's why they all seem to think the same thing about everything. Yeah. We were discussing a bit earlier.
Yes, and not only do they seem to think the same thing, but they are kind of frightened to differ from the status quo, and the status quo has massively moved. When I was young, the civil service was seen, generally speaking, as a kind of Sir Humphrey type figure, small c conservative, but very reliable. Now we've got people writing pronouns on their emails, saying that we must have diversity and inclusion, don't actually do any jobs, don't even go to the office, work from home. I mean, it's incredible switch around in sort of 20 years.
It's extraordinary. In fact, I think one of the big watersheds, you mentioned Blair there, without question, 50%, over 50% of kids going to university, that's made a big difference to their general political outlook. But also, you've got a situation where, for example, it was under Blair that there's been this massive demographic change that came in, basically. It was really turbocharged by Blair. But also, it's the general creep through all of our institutions, which is now gradually coming to light. We've seen it, with the banks and with Nigel. He hasn't stumbled on it, but it's almost like he stumbled on something, and so we sort of see...
But how useless have they been over this whole issue? And I saw the story yesterday was that they've now offered him the Coots account back.
That's right.
And quite rightly, he's saying, well, hang on a minute, let's have a conversation, let's see some compensation. And what about all these other thousands of bank accounts that have been shut down all over the sector?
Yes, exactly. Again, I don't think people realise or have understood quite how widespread this has been. I mean, there's been a story just today about Jeremy Hunt, Chancellor, basically being denied a bank account from Monzo. And again, what's emerged in that case is all these sort of certain bank employees talking about evil Tories, talking about, hoping that the Tories are wiped out. Just sheer, not just political hostility, but sheer hatred, but deranged, if anything.
Well, the sort of Emily Maitlis brigade.
Yes, exactly. And so therefore, maybe, Mike, what Nigel is doing with this new campaign of his will gradually open up the whole of this issue. I mean, we at the New Culture Forum talk a lot about what you might call public bodies, so museums and colleges, universities, things like that. It's all much of a muchness now. All populated by the same people. It's been like a revolution from the top.
Yes, and it's happened sort of by stealth almost, because we haven't... I wonder whether it's our fault for not paying attention, or whether it's sort of something that's a bit more insidious than that, and that they have actually had this plan all along.
I think there's a fair amount of long march through the institutions, but at the same time, I think it's not our fault, it's the Conservatives' fault for just simply accepting the situation. I mean, never ever... speaking up about it during the really bad time of 2020, with BLM and all the statues. That was a culture war.
That was.
And, Boris Johnson had to be basically sort of pulled in front of the camera to say anything.
Yes, but it kind of went away because BLM, in the end, was a fake sort of movement. And in fact, it was not something that was cogent enough to be held together at the centre. And because all of these people sort of jumped on the bandwagon and then realised that there was nobody driving it.
Yes, exactly. No, I think that, in that case, yes, it's been discredited. I would say that the general motives behind it are still very, very much there. The sympathies with it are very, very much there amongst the people that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Essentially, what it all amounts to, I would say, is an outright attack on our kind of society.
And our way of life.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We're here with Peter Whittle, founder and director of the New Culture Forum, gazing out across the London skyline. It still doesn't look particularly summery, but wherever you are, I hope you're enjoying it. It's cold. It's cooled down a bit in Europe as well. I mean, the fanaticism of the kind of woke now, from the weather, you know, to brand awareness, to, you know, posters that have to show trans men with mastectomies. I mean, it's an incredibly weird world we now live in, isn't it?
Well, I say it's a weird Western world.
Yes.
Still, I think these things affect the English-speaking West the worst. So America, New Zealand, Australia, and of course us. I mean, it is. I find the latest batch of it, Mike, particularly with Costa Coffee and these cartoons, these merry little cartoons that I think Doc Martens have also used.
It's sort of sinister in a way.
Yes, I think they're quite sinister, and also just obscene. I find them obscene, and this is glorifying the mutilation of girls, you know, having double mastectomies. I find it just appalling. I think most people do. They can't understand why it is that brands such as these even adopt these kind of
Well,
tactics.
we had a lot of calls yesterday from women who have had mastectomies as a result of suffering from cancer, and they're not very happy about this. And that kind of point of view is not taken into account at all, because, you know, the people who are the activists in these companies seem to think that what I would regard as heterosexual men and women don't have any skin in the game. It's nothing that we can, you know, it doesn't apply to us, basically.
I think people, to an extent, Mike, have got to try and wake up about a lot of this. I mean, what we saw in America, going back there, for Dylan Mulvaney, you know, the trans guy, huge kickback when it came to Bud Light, and they tried to use him on Bud Light.
Well, they practically ruined that brand altogether, haven't they?
Ruined the brand economically. They went down the pan. People have lost their jobs over it, and all of that. But it shows you that kind of action can work. And I would say that really, if people take this seriously, and they should boycott these brands, right? Boycott.
Yeah,
it.
teach them a lesson.
They have more power than they think.
Yes.
People have more power than they think.
They really do. Ben and Jerry's is the same, isn't it? I mean, they've been doing it for ages. They came out with the most ridiculous tweet on Independence Day in America, saying that America should give back, you know, half of its land to the indigenous people. You know, not at all admitting that they actually, you know, are sitting on it with their factories in Vermont, which is actually, are they going to give the land back? Are they going to close their factories down? Well, of course they're not. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of it is a strange mixture. On the one hand, you have the employees, often quite junior, who believe all this stuff, but then when you go up a few levels, quite often it's purely a cynical exercise in just showing exclusivity or whatever. But I think that it can work if you respond by not buying the products. I mean, I did this with Gillette, if you remember, quite a few years ago. They appalling anti-men ads that they did, so woke, and I just thought that's it, not going to use them anymore, and I still haven't. And as a result, one brand came up, you know, pretty much out of nowhere and was successful. And I think that people really have got that economic power. They really have.
I mean, I saw an incredible ad the other day, which is for a company I'd never heard of before, and so I'm not even going to give them a plug. It's some lingerie company. And if you saw this poster of a guy with a beard wearing a bra and suspender belt and stockings. And it was a sort of 90-sheet poster somewhere in I don't know, it was Oxford or somewhere like that. And you're kind of going, sorry, who are you selling to exactly here?
Well, it's killed, I mean, it's killed stone dead a whole sort of section of satire and comedy. You know, these would all have been skits at one point. That kind of thing is dead insulting. I know exactly the poster you mean. It's a bearded guy, you know, hairy chest and all the rest of it, in lingerie. And it's for, I think it's something, it says something like, this is, you know, it's great for women, that's all women, or for all women, or something. it's a guy, you know, and don't insult women.
Yeah, he's not a woman. I know, incredible. Yeah, but I mean, people in Scotland have said this to me, that in the time of Nicola Sturgeon, I don't know whether it's any better or worse now, but when she was in charge, you know, April Fool's stories just didn't get done anymore because the reality of politics in Scotland was so weird that you couldn't actually convince people of anything else. Let's finish up with the story you touched upon earlier, immigration. Massive story for the next year, because it will be a big issue at the election. Keir Starmer still really doesn't have any immigration policy from what we can see. His 5 sort of, you know, planks of what he wants to do don't include immigration. Why can't the government sort this out, especially the small boats business?
I think the will is not there. Like, I think the will is not there. It's getting more and more surreal by the moment. There was a story I saw a few days ago of basically immigrants being put up, illegal immigrants being put up in basically new houses, luxury houses, in an area which had massive homelessness. This is, I find, obscene, disgusting, and I think people should start getting seriously angry about it. Everything that you hear the government say between now and the election in 2024 is going to be window dressing. I don't think they've...
Well, I find this argument about moving them from a hotel to a barge to, you know, to a disused army camp, you know, people don't care about that. They just don't want them to come. They don't want to think about where they're being moved to.
I think the decision has been made that basically we are going to carry on very much as we were before. The decision by the Tories and Labour, because there's not really any difference on this issue anymore. It's just purely what they say.
Well, the only thing that Labour has said, and it hasn't been said officially as policy for the whole party, is that they would have processing plants, processing centres and offices in France, which doesn't solve the problem. You know,
I think that Labour is basically open borders. It's an open borders party. I think what is particularly grotesque, really, is the way in which the Tories still insist, Home Secretary after Home Secretary after leader, that we are going to get the numbers down. Last year, the highest ever, 650 net.
That was net. 1.2 million before the people left.
This is... People say this is not sustainable. I mean, that's rather nice language. I would say that this is sort of nation-changing stuff.
It really is.
You know, it just simply cannot go on. And I think the only real way anything will change is if there is some form of new party. I
think that has to happen, but maybe the system has to change. Listen, Peter, we could talk all day. Great to see you. We'll have you back on soon, I'm sure. New Culture Forum, check it out. He's the founder and the director of it. Some great YouTube stuff going on out there. We'll be, meanwhile, talking about